It's my pleasure to introduce Laughlin Artz and his ambition to impact 500 million people. He's got a lot to say, and he's the executive director of 2020 and Bust. So and beyond, and Bust, or Bust, 2020 or Bust. So welcome him to the stage.
Okay. Thank you. It's great to be here. I was here last year and surprisingly was invited back. You know, I don't have any great spiritual awakening that I had to get me here. Never dreamed of being in global warming. I'm not even a particular fan of the human species, so it wasn't, you know, I don't even have any kids, so what am I doing, right? But about 3.5 years ago, just as a brief intro, I was doing some work as a journalist, and I thought, let's do some stuff on global warming. Seems to be a big deal, maybe not a big deal, just, you know, what the deal is. And all I wanted to know, and all I thought, the ordinary person, I am really here on behalf of ordinary people, not the scientists, not the green people, not the movie stars, not the politicians, just ordinary people. And I thought the only thing they really would want to know is how long do we have till the crap hits the fan? And I had some colleagues in some previous work I'd done in a global hunger initiative, and I went to them because they were now, one was the Assistant Secretary General at the UN and big deal in climate change, and I went to him and he said, do you really want me to tell you? And I said, yeah, and he said, well, it's probably already too late. It's 3.5 years ago. And I thought, whoa, that's intense. And then I said, well, is what we're doing enough to, you know, get on track? And he said, we're not even on the scale. And so that's really bothered me. And was one of those kind of, you ever see those science fiction movies where everything freezes? And I remember being there on the street around 44th Street near the UN, and I'm looking around thinking, man, if this guy's right, you people put your glasses down, stop drinking, stop driving. This is like a big deal. And so I stopped doing everything else and started going to the UN conferences and getting studies and NGO organizations and everything I could get my hands on. And one nice thing about being nobody, no credentials, no degrees, nothing, is that everybody talks to you. Really, because you're harmless. And everybody told me the same thing. It's probably already too late. You're not going to print it, are you? And I thought, holy moly, this is like the Twilight Zone. So my realization was, and this is why I'm here, is that what's predictable is that 20 years from now, most of the world is going to wake up and wonder, how come nobody told us the real deal? Not the despair, not the dead polar bears, not the optimism, not the hope, not the kumbaya, let's all work together crap, but the real deal about climate change so we could have done something. So that became our quest. So why we're here is that we say that everybody, whatever they do, wherever they're from, economic, sexuality, you know, whatever, you know, you have the right to know what's so in the matter of the climate crisis. And anyone who wants to make a difference in ending it, not just progressing it or doing their best, but actually ending it, should have that shot. So we went to work, and I got, like I said, we had some colleagues, I got scientists that were crazy enough that said, okay, let's build a model that's going to give the ordinary person, make it simple enough for them to actually see what it's going to take to end global warming and give them something that they can actually do to make a measurable impact. So here's the deal. If you're going to end this thing, you have to have a critical mass of humanity related powerfully to the reality of the situation and inaction consistent with that reality. And right now, that is not there. So if you're going to be powerfully related to reality, you have to be working in real time, not someday, not as soon as possible, not as fast as we can. You have to be working with real actions, not as much as we can do. You have to be working in real results. And if those don't happen, you've got to get real consequences. Now, here's the essential elements of that reality. So we are out to bring to everyone in the world these 4 facts. And if you don't have these 4 facts, whether you're in the climate movement or the climate cult or whatever it is, or whether you're not in it, if you don't have these 4 facts, you can't work on ending it. One is where we are, where we need to be, where we're predictably headed, and the gap between 2 and 3. So everybody's pretty clear that where we need to be is not to blast past the 2 degrees Celsius increase above pre-industrial levels, right? It's pretty clear. Now, where we are is that with what's already happened and with the carbon that's in the atmosphere, we are at approximately 1.3 to 1.4 degrees Celsius hotter than where we were at pre-industrial times, okay? So we've got a 0.6 to 0.7 degree window left to play with. And everybody on the planet needs to know that that's the window we've got. And in conjunction with the carbon budget, because the model we came up with, and this is in conjunction with really smart people, much smarter than me, lead authors of the emission gap, UNEP emissions gap report. We've got great teams of scientists, all over the world working on this with us, right? 3.5 years this has taken. Real simple for anybody to understand is that if we can get to zero carbon before we use up the carbon budget, we'll win the game. And people can get that. And then they can also get that predictably where we're headed is that we're going to use that budget up in 16 years. And what that means is that in 16 years, we're going to lock in a catastrophic future. And we want people to know that. Now, what's the problem with telling people we've got 16 years? Call me in 15, right? So that wasn't going to work. So we said we got to come up with a shorter game, something we can get people in. So then we thought, how about this? We're not going to win the game, but what if we can come up with a game that gets us on track to winning that game? And that's where 2020 or bust came up. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the long-term game is to get to zero before we exhaust the carbon budget. And the short-term game is to get on track to winning the long-term game. This is the gap, the only chart I promise. Again, my people don't like charts. So, but what you can see, and this is from the IPCC report, it's from the White House report, also from the Mission 2020 report that just came out, that 2020 is the break point. That if we can produce a dramatic reduction in our current emissions between now and 2020 and start to decline after that, we've got a shot. So the bottom line, we've got 3 years to get on track to ending the climate crisis. Predictably in 2020, we'll be at 52 gigatons of CO2 equivalencies in terms of emissions. If we can move that 52 to 44, again, simple, anybody can get. If we could go from 52 to 44, that will have arced the trajectory, whatever it's called, there's a term for it and I don't know it, but it'll go the other way enough to actually get us on track to getting to zero in time. So this is what we went out to do. And then we said, awesome, 8 gigatons. Now, is that something that like everybody, most people, people think, well, it's going to be up to industry, it's going to be up to the politics, it's going to be up to, the UN, Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, Tesla, somebody, right? So who's going to save our butts, right? And we said, how about if it could be ordinary people? Even though everybody said it couldn't, I was too stupid, so I just keep doing stuff. So we said, let's do that. Again, gave it to the scientists, they went back, did the calculations, and found out, voila, if we can get 500 million people, that's 1 out of every 14 people alive right now, 500 million people to take very simple carbon-reducing actions between now and the end of 2020, it will bridge the 8 gigaton gap. So that became the game. 2020 or bust is the game to empower 500 million people to wake up to that as an individual, we've got the power to actually get this thing on track and end it, and we've got 3 years to do it. So empowerment was a major part of our campaign. One is awareness, and information is important, but obviously it's not enough, right? Somebody that's on a diet, they're not losing weight because they don't have the critical piece of information called don't eat as much, right? But the information doesn't translate to action. So what you've got to have in addition to information, and this is really the core of our campaign, is the ownership. Is that what it is for an individual to reclaim ownership for this situation and everything involved in it. It isn't anybody else's to solve. It's not the scientists. It's not industries. It's not the politicians. It's mine. And then the last thing is impact. So awareness is a function of information, ownership is a function of responsibility, and impact is a function of action. So, this is something very fundamental. The title of my talk was Climate Change, the Real Crisis. And there's a lot of stuff out there about, fear. Is that a good motivator, right? Or inspiration, is that a good motivator, right? Or hope, is that a good motivator? You all know, everybody's familiar with all that, right? So here's my request of you as people that are much smarter and all that stuff to me. I would like you to take all those studies you've got, the psychological thing with the bell curves and the demographics and what motivates people, and throw them out. Yes, we're afraid when you actually give people the straight story about it, but it's not who we are. Yeah, we're in despair sometimes, but it's not who we are. Yeah, we get hopeful sometimes, but it's not who we are. So we are not what goes on with us in terms of our moods or emotions and personality, and we have all that. But we're not a demographic, we're human beings. We don't live on a bell curve, we live in the world. And what you've got to do in terms of this campaign and what we want to bring is that we want to speak to the highest denominator of who human beings are. We want to speak to their bigness, that you can actually take the facts and you are big enough. And yes, it'll scare the crap out of you, but guess what? You'll get over it. Just like when somebody says you've got cancer or your house is on fire. Yes, it's a crisis and it's upsetting, but you got to get the facts or you got no power. See, if you don't know who people are, give them hope. If you know who they are, give them real power. But you got to talk to their bigness, not to their smallness. So, here's the context. You walk around and ask people, what's the deal? It's too big and it's too complex. Number one, can't get your hands around it. Someone else or something is handling it, and I as an individual can't make any real difference. This is the water people swim in. Now, if the water you walk around in is it's too big and too complex, somebody else is handling it, and there's nothing really I can do, what do you think you're going to do? Not much. What you'll do is what most ordinary people do, recycle and hope. So we had to get this game losable so you could win it. Anybody like football? Good, so imagine this. You're going to play football, except I'm not going to tell you where the ball is. I'm not going to tell you where the goal is, and I'm not going to tell you how much time is left on the clock. Go play. You're going to just kick the ball into the dark and hope, and that's what most people are doing with climate change. So we've got to get it out of that and get the goal line. So the real crisis is not carbon, temperature, politics, economics, science, or industry. The crisis is people's relationship to themselves, each other, and the world. Most people relate to each other like they don't have much power. So that's why even when you hear talks about people talking about the power that an individual can make, it's all about voting. It's all about getting in some big organization. But it's not about me and the direct action and the direct choice that I take today and the global impact that can have on the reality of the situation. So the opportunity, and it's a huge opportunity, but it's not full of hope, it's reality. The opportunity of the climate crisis is to wake up to how we relate to ourselves, each other, and the world, and in that awakening, to seize the opportunity to forge a new kind of humanity. That I'm not going to live anymore like I don't have the power, and I'm not going to live anymore like I'm over here and you're over there, and if I'm going to win, you're going to lose. I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to live like the earth is something that I can own and buy. So, who people empowerment requires relating to people as their bigness, not as their concerns, reactions, circumstances, emotions, beliefs, or points of view. And here's my litmus test. How many of you have been afraid and taken an action? At the same time. Bingo. How many of you have been afraid and not taken an action at the same time? There you go. They're not connected. So, real power. A talent for speaking differently rather than arguing well is the chief instrument of cultural change. Richard Rorty, one of my favorite philosophers. So, the current language of climate change, generalizations and platitudes. I go to a lot of these conferences, and boy, how many times I hear at the end of somebody's talk, we know it's not enough, but we're hopeful. Good, you go into surgery, and your surgeon comes in and looks down, and she says, wow, this is really complicated. I know I'm not going to do enough, but I'm hoping. Now, you're not going to stay on the table, but that's the table we give ordinary people to work on. So the new reality that we're out to bring into existence, The climate crisis is endable, but only endable as a function of the specific actions. Yes, I have the power, not like some Pollyanna optimistic. No, I've got the power. This is mine, all of it. And we're going to shift the context of climate change, people's relationship to it, from complex, overwhelming, and inaccessible to simple, actionable, and engaging. Is that the right color? I'm on the wrong color. Okay, good. Hold on. One last thing. Okay, so here's the deal. Whoop, sorry. Can I go back? Red button. Red button? Oh, there it is. We have got the first End the Climate Crisis app. 2020 or bust. You can go to the Apple Store, the Google Store, download it, you put your location in, also what you're going to do, it gives your budget. Everybody else in the world in the 2020 or bust app, it gets aggregated. So I can actually see, man, I didn't eat a hamburger today, and here's the global impact on ending the crisis that I made. We're in the process of upgrading it, so it's going to be gamified games. It's going to be awesome. You're going to win points and all of that. So anyway, that's it. So we're out to empower 500 million people. If I come back next year, the game will be that we will have gotten 15 million people by next year. So that's what we're on the hook for, okay? So thank you, thank you, thank you.